Your skill is extraordinary.
Hi, and welcome to episode 0 of Extraordinary Quest for Ordinary Life. I'm your host, Mike Brudenell, and this is the introduction episode. So, what is the introduction episode? Well, to be frank, it's in the title. It's the introduction. Extraordinary Quest of Ordinary Life is a podcast I've been planning for quite a while. It's gone through a lot of different incarnations of what it might be. But for me, it's motivational. It's motivational for me and hopefully for you, the listener. I'm a martial artist, and I'm not. I'm a fighter, and I'm not. I'm a writer, and I'm not. I'm a lot of things. I'm contradictions. And I'm trying to, through this podcast, come to really know myself. And hopefully find what I'm looking for. This podcast is about life fulfillment. It's about leading a fulfilling life. So, a few things about me. I'm 46 years old. I decided a long time ago that age was never going to be a factor. It's never going to define me. I grew up early on in Duluth, Minnesota. We lived up in the hills and had a forest for a backyard, essentially. And that's where I spent most of my days until I moved to Edina, Minnesota, which was a culture shock for a forest child like myself. For those who are not familiar with the Twin Cities area, Edina, Minnesota is an affluent suburb, very affluent. This move became a defining point in my life map. It was at the age of 11, a few months after we moved. We moved just before the start of my 6th grade elementary school year. And December 7th, 1983, my father had a massive heart attack and died. That is a moment in time that's really shaped me. And while it's giving me a real understanding of mortality, it also became a block. After my father passed away, I picked up his books that he was reading. And these were primarily all science fiction and fantasy. And so that's where my first geek love came from, was from reading these books. I think I did it to try and understand him. But that moment in time, which felt like the end, gave me a feeling of abandonment. And that abandonment feeling put up a wall of not wanting to really strive to be something great, even though I always wanted to be something great. Whatever that is. Greatness is subjective. There's a lot of people who think themselves great who are not. But for the purpose of Extraordinary Quest of Ordinary Life, it's doing something that's meaningful for yourself, for your family. It's living how you want to live. I wrote this down and it's in my journal. Your life is your business is your life. For me, right, and I don't want to jump ahead, but what Extraordinary Quest of Ordinary Life is for me is the idea that all of us are on a quest. Life is a quest. Finding the right partner is a quest. Learning a new skill is a quest. Growing up, I always had dreams of being a stuntman, an architect, a writer. I wanted to write novels, science fiction and fantasy novels. I never did any of those things. I ended up being a carpenter, a remodeler, a roofer, and then accidentally fell into the mortgage industry, where I labored for nearly 2 decades. And the mortgage crisis, the implosion of the mortgage industry, changed my outlook on life. Now, that's weird because my outlook on life always was about living in the now. I've had a fair amount of tragedy in my life. First, the death of my father at a young age. I've buried a lot of people very close to me. But back to what is Extraordinary Quest for Ordinary Life. So I always wanted to be a stuntman. I wanted to be an architect or a writer. I don't really want to be an architect anymore. But there's a part of me that still wants to be a stuntman. And absolutely, I still want to be a writer. One of the things that always has defined me as well is the martial arts. Just dealing, with grief still and going through puberty and becoming a man, I had a lot of lack of impulse control, I guess. So, but one day, my mother arrives home and finds me out in the front yard with a punching dummy that I had created. I'd made it out of clothes stuffed with newspapers. So she comes home and she finds me out there punching and kicking. I watched a shit ton of kung fu movies and martial arts movies in the 70s and 80s. Kung fu theater was something that was a favorite of mine. So I was reenacting, scenes. I was trying to be a martial artist. And my mother comes home and she sees me doing this, and I'm like, okay, well, we've got to get him into karate class or something. So that's where I started. I started in Taekwondo when I was a teenager. In my 20s, I moved to Capoeira, which is a Brazilian martial arts. In my late 30s, early 40s, I moved to mixed martial arts, Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu. We did a Jeet Kune Do philosophy of martial arts, which was very cool because my coach knew that I did capoeira and would help me integrate capoeira movements into my MMA game. So I did that for a couple years. Martial arts has always been a passion of mine. So a lot of really different interests and hobbies. And with Extraordinary Quest of Ordinary Life, for me, this is a journey of making all of those interests into my life. So as I mentioned, I was in the mortgage industry for nearly 2 decades. And when I left that, I started a small business. It's an interesting niche. I'm a mobile notary public. So what that is I drive around certifying documents. It gives me flexibility, but not any really growth area. There's a quick ceiling I can hit as a mobile notary public because the truth is I can only be one place at a time. And there's only so many hours in a day. This is definitely not a passive income type of business. It's not a growth business. Not unless I wanted to take on notaries under me. And from my time as a manager in the mortgage industry, that's not something that I wanted to do. So that has only been a pit stop, a rest area. Getting out of one business and having the freedom to decide what I want to do from there. The plan has always been to write a book, finish a book. I'm working on a book. I haven't finished it. It's been a long time and I haven't finished it. It's hard when the only deadline is yourself. So, again, with Extraordinary Quest of Ordinary Life, it's about taking the things that you want from life and making them quests. I'm just going to trust that you'll come to the next episode. We can go on a journey together, fulfilling these quests and building an amazing life. There's a lot that I do now that I'm going to talk about over the course of episodes to come. But that's what Extraordinary Quest of Ordinary Life is about. It's about fulfilling goals. It's about setting accountability for myself. So I might as well talk about the structure of the episode. My producer is going to be my wife Stacy, and her company Sovereign Hues LLC is the umbrella that this show is under. I hope or anticipate this show to be about 45 minutes. I want to have guests at times, so those may be longer, maybe up to an hour and a half. That depends. This show is going to be twice a month, so bi-weekly, every other week, with the plan to have highlight videos on the YouTube channel, because of course we have to hit all the social media points of the physical things that I'm doing that are part of my quests. For me, there's got to be a multi-layered approach. The shows will be broken up into 3 segments. That's the key, right? And for me, they have to be mind, body, and spirit. In the mind segment, I'm going to go through talking about the business of questing. What is it that is needed? Resources, finance, accountability. The next one, body. Well, that's the physical aspects. As I mentioned, I'm a martial artist, and I'm not. Here's what I mean when I said that before. I've studied all these disciplines, but it's been sporadic. Considering I've studied martial arts of one kind of or another for 30 years, I'm not a master of any of them. Kind of a jack of all trades. And you'll learn from the podcast episodes that that's pretty common with me. I don't know if that will ever change. Whether or not I'll be a master of anything is something that is undecided. But I can do a lot of shit really well. I want to follow through that segment, what I'm doing physically. I'm going to do a skill set between episodes. And the skill set will be something that I'm either learning or trying to get into my daily or very regular routine. Probably first start out as exercises, stretching, movement, body awareness, right? But we'll go into different types of martial arts move, acrobatic moves. I work with melee weapons. Melee weapons are weapons that are close quarters. The saber, staff, fighting sticks, knives, things like that. So what am I working on? Am I working on stage combat, choreography? Am I doing kendo, rapier? Am I doing capoeira? Am I doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu? All of those things are on the table. So that's the body segment. Now, the spirit segment is about self-awareness, mind, body, and spirit. The 3 cornerstones of a well-rounded life, in my opinion. So that's what the segments are going to be for the show. And I really look forward to having you on that journey with me, seeing where it leads. This is something that I'm very invested in. I've been thinking about this for a long time. I have a lot of quests to complete. Finishing the novel, becoming a better fighter, becoming a better person, father, husband, friend. So thank you for joining me on this introduction episode. Throughout the course of the show, you're going to learn that there's different ways to be a patron, help out. Please go to your podcast host of choice. Subscribe, so make sure you're not missing any of the episodes. Give me a rating, right? How do you like the episode so far? How do you like the show so far? Leave a comment. Tell a friend. In the end, this show is about the quests themselves, right? So my first goal, my first quest is to have my own podcast. If you're hearing this, that means I've achieved my first goal. So, huzzah. This is a show. It's supposed to be entertaining, and I hope you will be entertained. But shows like this cost money. and I want it to be self-sustaining, and I wanted to build it to really be a business as part of my creative presence. Writer, martial artist, storyteller, podcaster, right? These are all part of my professional life now. So another way is to help support monetarily. Best way to do that is to become a patron on Patreon. Patreon.com. And I'll talk more about Patreon in a future episode. I think I have that planned for episode 3. But there'll be links, and there's a lot of people who already know what Patreon is, and you'll have episode 3 in your ear holes before you know it. The first few episodes are going to come out pretty fast. Binge them, and please get excited for the next one. Again, I'm your host, Mike Brudenell, and this is Extraordinary Quests of Ordinary Life. Thank you for listening, and keep questing.